So these are our covers, that the stories that we've done in lockdown. Our most latest and most explosive cover was the triumvirate of Hardeep Singh Puri, Dr. Somnath, and Mr. Nitin Gadkari, which we had together last month. We had a series of webinars on infrastructure, Infranirbhar, and they spoke extensively. We had a Q&A with them, and all the links are available on YouTube. Our team will be happy to share them with you. As with all of us, our digital and online efforts have doubled and quadrupled. While the print continues to be our mainstay, we've had a huge jump in our online numbers. We had about 25,000 unique visitors in November to Construction World. And we're now, if you can see, we're close to 2 lakhs. These numbers are a little outdated. 1,43,000 has now become close to 2 lakhs. The audience of the profiles of our readers, and that's some of our social reach. Just to give you a quick heads up as well, we've kind of been trailblazers in this space, and we've been awarding contracting companies, infrastructure companies, architects, and builders. These properties are between 15 and 18 years old, and we've been following a rigorous process for awarding these companies over the years. Just yesterday, we concluded a story on India's most trusted brands. And I'm sorry, that's the first slide you saw. And we did our first ever trust survey of the construction industry based on a hybrid model of a perception-based survey, which we put to the industry. We put about 130 companies to vote. Then we got a jury in. The jury made their selection from the top 20. And then we took a selection from the senior most people from our survey. So it's a little complicated. I think you'll be able to read the process that we followed. We've just finished a brand new story and on India's most trusted and now admired construction brands. This is an upcoming event. Construction World is doing one on Construct Maharashtra, 28th April. You can register now for any more queries. You can connect with Praharshi in the team, and she'll be happy to connect you. We have Mr. Piyush Goyal coming up for our Infranirbhar series on railways. And I'm just going to keep this as a freeze frame for us to be able to have a pointed discussion. So before we go into the discussion, I would like each one of you to introduce yourselves. May I start with Mr. Athalye? Just a brief 30-second introduction.
Good afternoon all. I am Shriran Atle. I am the group president for Aurum Group. Aurum is developing a 70 lakh square feet integrated IT township in Ghansoli, Navi Mumbai on Thane Bedapur Road. And we already have pre-sold 2 buildings of 15 lakh square feet to Ascendas. And on our campus, we have 1,700 apartments which are coming up. And from the day one, we have been very keen on making the building smarter. We'll get into that later. But these are LEED Platinum certified office buildings and fully ventilated apartments for residences.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Khanna?
Yeah, good afternoon. My name is Amit. I am an architect and I am involved in education. Our focus in our practice is on designing and constructing sustainable buildings.
Welcome. Mr. Anand?
Yeah, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. So I'm Anand with CII's Indian Green Building Council, popularly known as IGBC. For the last 25 years, we in IGBC are very proud to be associated with all the stakeholders of Indian construction industry. in developing all the buildings and built environment in an eco-friendly way. Thanks to all the architects, designers, developers, MEP consultants, material manufacturers. So today, IGBC or India has more than 6,300 plus projects amounting to 7.7 billion square feet going green with IGBC. That is a brief. Once again, we are very grateful to all the stakeholders of Indian construction industry. I'm very proud to be part of this Construction World series focusing on key elements. Thank you. Thanks to be part of it.
Thanks. Mr. Peter Walla?
Hi, good afternoon,
Hi.
everyone. My name is Mernosh, and I head sales, marketing, and international business in Godrej Security Solutions, which is India's one of India's largest security solutions providers. Happy to be here.
Yeah, glad to have you. Mr. Parocharan?
Yeah, hi, good afternoon to all. My name is Anthony Parocharan. I've been pretty much with the elevator industry for 30 years. Been with Otis and Schindler for a pretty long time. And now currently, I'm the CEO of the Eros Group, which is basically into elevators and car parking.
Yeah, Mr. Purnam.
Hi, I head the smart and connected IoT-based workplace experiences vertical under smart riding. So we work across segments, the smart workplaces, smart buildings, smart campuses, and smart cities, just to make sure that we have connected spaces everywhere and we are able to connect people, spaces, and technology seamlessly to be able to deliver human experiences. So that's what I'm based out of Bangalore and delighted to be part of this conversation.
Thank you. Mr. Manuel?
Yeah, my name is Dipu Manuel. I got around 20 years of experience in air conditioning field. Currently, I am heading the commercial aircon business for Mitsubishi Electric, and we are supplying some of the advanced air conditioning systems for the smart buildings designed and executed by various people in India. Thank you to be here and for part of this program.
No, thank you and welcome. I'm going to ask Charu to just lead us. She's our lead writer. And I'd just like her to just give you a little bit of a talk on what, what is the pointers of the discussion, a little bit of the research, and then we can take it one-on-one. Yeah, over you, Charu.
Thank you, Falguni. So good afternoon, sirs. Construction World has been doing a lot of writing on smart building in the last couple of years. We all know, of course, that smart buildings use technology to capture and share a lot of information on a building, from occupancy to events, that would be usage. And this information is either captured through users or by default automatically. So occupancy could be captured automatically, whereas the usage of the asset would obviously depend on some info from the user. Eventually, this information is fed automatically to the various building systems, whether they are HVAC or security or lighting. And from there on, the whole idea of a smart building is that the systems pick up the information and work on it. They respond to it in a way which helps the building save energy and work more efficiently. Now, if you come to the realm of smart buildings in India, an interesting nugget which I'm sure a lot of you would be aware of is that a couple of years ago, so that's actually 2015, Honeywell had conducted a survey of 2,000 buildings in India, and they had found they basically were trying to identify the smartest buildings in India. And it's interesting that Indira Gandhi Airport was voted India's smartest building. And they also found, if I could share with you, that airports and hotels were in the various categories, in the various verticals of buildings that they surveyed, were the smartest buildings around. So that would be these being smarter than retail, commercial, and all the other categories of buildings. We found that interesting. We also found it interesting that the gap between the smartest buildings, so you say if you take the top 10 smartest buildings, they scored 92 on a 15-point scorage framework, whereas the other 2,000 buildings together scored 33 on the same framework, which really shows that there's a huge gap between where we could be and where we are. So the idea of having all of you on board today is, of course, one of the key objectives is we'd like to identify some areas where perhaps we have moved forward in the last pandemic year. And the reason we say that is because touchless is something that has come, it entered the conversation a lot more in this last year. And so by default, the word automation has also come into the picture. So in what way do you all believe that the pandemic has helped this process or will help the process? And what are the various solutions and products that some of you, of course, bring to the table that our readers would benefit from knowing? So this is really the crux, the key of the discussion sort of that we are trying to put forward. And I think now, Parvani, we get to.
Yeah, are you able to see the screen with the pointers of the discussion? 1 minute.
No.
Yeah.
Now we are able to, yeah.
Visible?
Now visible.
Okay. Just 1 second. You want to just take a look at these questions, and if you're comfortable, I can take it off the screen. So one of the things is the pandemic and how it has changed our lives forever. The role of smart buildings, smart offices, smart homes, hybrid offices, the requirements. How has everything changed with the pandemic across this industry? What have been your key offerings to make buildings smart? Who's buying them? And to what extent does building smart increase the upfront cost of a building? To what extent does it reduce the maintenance cost? And how does it increase the life cycle cost of a building, which is not mentioned here? We can keep the slide on, and we can start with. Can I remove the slide?
Yeah, that's fine. You can remove it.
Yeah, you can remove the slide.
Yeah, that's okay.
So, Mernosh, perhaps we can start with you.
Yeah.
On, how has the pandemic increased the awareness? I mean, how has lives changed?
So the pandemic has definitely triggered an increase in awareness and vigilance amongst consumers about home security solutions available in the market to secure their premises and complexes. So residential complexes as well as homeowners have been seen adopting high-tech security solutions such as CCTV cameras, which allow remote surveillance and two-way communication, or for that matter, alarm systems which use sensors to detect activity on the premise and alerts the authority in time, or for that matter, video door phones to a very large extent that helps in communication between the homeowner and the visitor without actually opening the door. So we have seen a significant spurt in the interest for video door phones. In fact, according to a recent research that we did, it's called the cocoon effect on home and health security. Almost 47% of Indians have made a shift towards investing in home and health security gadgets, as opposed to aspirational investments such as jewelry, home, and technology gadgets. In fact, during the pandemic, we also saw retrofitting of home security solutions being done in old residential complexes and homes to keep the home safe with the rising concerns. The other revolution that is taking place in modern residences is the installation of automated robotic lockers. And that has significantly increased as well for keeping the valuables and documents of the homeowner safe. So people don't want to go to a bank and access the locker on a regular basis. Instead, they would want to actually access a vault, which would act as an ATM and get the locker to them instead of they going to the locker. So that's the other thing that has also increased. So overall, I think the awareness as well as the adoption of security solutions has increased in the pandemic. And we hope that that behavior continues to happen even post the pandemic, because all of these are ways and means of smartly securing yourself going ahead.
You've heard any key offerings specifically in this time?
Yes, so we have several offerings. So we've got Wi-Fi home security cameras, we've got CCTV cameras, we've got video door phones, we've got alarm systems, we've got turnstiles, we've got boom barriers, we've got access control systems. As I said, robotic lockers as well. So a lot of products, which are digitally savvy, and of course, going ahead, there is a lot of AI and ML happening in all these products as well. So a lot of artificial intelligence integration in all these products is going to be the way forward.
What about the cost of the building? And you're probably, but the upfront cost when you smarten up the building.
Yeah, so
it's a deterrent. As earlier it used to be with green, where people said it's a 20% cost, 15% cost. That has changed, that has shifted.
Yeah,
Today,
so honestly, we don't have a choice right now. So I think, they have almost become mandatory. So for instance, video door phones is almost a mandatory device, and video door phones not just a basic device, that a lot of builders get from China, but essentially something, which can help you secure your data. So your cloud is in India, and at the same time ensure that, you can speak to the visitor irrespective of wherever you are. So our video door phones enables the person to access his door, irrespective of wherever he is, whether he's in the house or away or traveling. So from that point of view, yes, the initial cost is there, but and it's an investment, and we should consider security as an investment rather than a cost. And as far as the maintenance cost is concerned, it's not much. So we offer annual maintenance contracts, etc. as well.
I'm going to thanks Mernosh. I'm going to take it to Amit.
Thank you.
As an architect, while you may envision a building which has the smartest features in place, you're constrained by the requirements of your client and what your client will permit. So perhaps architects are the ones who face the cost factor the most. Also put it to the developer on this in this discussion. So in fact, I'd put the cost factor to you first. What is the upfront cost? What's the maintenance cost? How is it justified? What's the life cycle cost? And as an architect, how would you pitch it to the developer or to your client?
I think it's one of those things that, like Mernosh said, it was used to be aspirational, but now I think it's quite mainstream. I mean, the fact that you can open a bathroom door and not have to touch a light switch, the light comes on and the exhaust comes on. The fact is that when you want to wash your hands, you can, wash them in a sensor tap instead of having to sort of press a button or open a tap. I think these things are pretty mainstream. A lot of these reactive gadgets are not a great impact on cost. I mean, because let's say a building costs 100 rupees and electrical services cost, 5-6 rupees out of that 100 rupees. Maybe adding sensor-based lights, adding timed gadgets would maybe add a few percentage points to those 5 rupees. However, automation is a different story. Automation, when you're trying to do all building automation, and for that I mean air conditioning, lighting, drapes, audio, video, facade security, etc., that is a huge jump. And I think that's a huge jump because there is no singular entity that can sort of bring you a solution that solves all of these issues. I mean, the gentleman from Godrej will agree with me that, the point is that Mitsubishi doesn't talk to Godrej very well, right? And Mitsubishi and Daikin doesn't talk to Schneider, and Toshiba doesn't talk to Lutron. And so we have these issues where our interfaces are not, in sync, right? So not all companies follow the same standard. I'll give you a small example. If you buy a gallon of milk in the US, the gallon of milk fits straight into a slot cut into the fridge because it's so standardized across the board. If we had a streamlined base technology, right, which allowed all manufacturers, whether they're drapes, whether they're air conditioning, whether it's Philips lighting, everybody could come together and had to design to a standard that an automation, any provider can come in and provide a solution. Right now, it's very ad hoc. That's my opinion.
In fact, a lack of standardization is a problem across industries. If you take your doors and windows, when you buy them or you buy them abroad, everything is standard.
Yeah.
Here, every house has got its own specs and its own sizing, and hence the lack of standardization throws up, I think problems across industries.
Yeah, and Deepu would know that, if he would know that VRF Mitsubishi, sometimes if you have to make it talk to air conditioning, to automation, you have to put something called Cool Master. I don't know whether it's still a thing these days, but it's just not synced together well.
What about the, I'm still going to ask you, Amit, what about the costing? And if you're pitching it to your client, what's the total cost and is there a resistance?
Well, let's say a client is putting up a 60,000 square foot commercial office building, right? That thing is going to cost anywhere between 10 and 15 crores. The automation is not going to break his back, right? It's the inconvenience of it that normally people would say, let's not do it because it sounds too complicated, right? Because It's not a question of spending that little money. It's a question of, okay, what if it doesn't go? What if it doesn't work? What if we need a replacement? Let's say this technology is, cutting edge today, but 3 years down the line, there's going to be this new thing that comes in. What is going to be a replacement cost? And so building owners are very progressive. I would like to say that first. And anybody who's, gotten to the point where they're developing entire buildings, they want to deliver value, but they don't want to take the risk of having something fail and nobody being able to fix it because it's behind some closed wall and you have to rip out a whole shaft. Nobody wants to do that.
Isn't that part of our, of the design offering to simplify the process to make it more acceptable?
So I think that's what I'm trying to say, that at the moment, technology amongst various vendors, which is, let's say, air conditioning, lighting, curtain control, audio and video, is not streamlined enough for one interface to work for all of them. The people from the industry I'd be happy to be corrected if something has developed in the past few months. And Deepu is shaking his head, so it doesn't look good.
What has your experience been in the pandemic, Amit? Just before I move on,
I think
a shift in terms of a shift in awareness, or the requirements that you need to provide. Anything you'd like to throw on, particularly pandemic related?
So I think so. Let's talk about the higher end of the market where people can afford architects and afford good buildings, right? And at that end of the market, people are used to having staff run their buildings. And I think one of the key insights that people had was that, okay, you know what, we need to run our own buildings. So can we make them in a way that there is slightly less, there's slightly less maintenance, there's slightly less interaction. So, for instance, Mahernosh was saying that, video door phones are standard now. There's no question that somebody's going to ring the bell and you're going to go down and see who it is. You have to be able to communicate with the front door and, let's say, your, lounge or whatever. The other thing that I think I have seen is that a lot of people want sensor-based equipment. They want sensor-based lighting. They want that if it goes dark outside, the boundary wall lights go on by themselves, and maybe they're solar powered so they can be off grid. So stuff like that, stuff that makes your life more convenient.
All right, thanks. I'll probably come back to you, Amit. Over to you, Deepu.
Yeah.
What has been the shift in the pandemic?
Shift in the pandemic is about one is about the quality of the air what we breathe. So we were talking about smart building, automated buildings, but the quality of the air is one thing which was always left out. So that is a one point which has come into limelight because of this pandemic. And second part is regarding the controlling of the air conditioning. See, there was always a remote attached to the remote aircon.
In fact, I'm just going to interject, Deepu, here that the quality of the air and the air conditioning itself in the pandemic has been a huge issue. And there has been debate upon debate upon debate. So as the representative of the air conditioning industry on this forum, I don't think it has been able to answer the basic question of air quality and sanctity of air quality through air conditioning.
Yeah, it was never, people who are using air conditioner was never aware or conveniently used to forget about the quality of the air. But now it has come into place. Most of the people have started talking with the retrofitting to increase the air quality, or the new buildings are getting designed where they have a continuous monitoring of air quality for forced ventilation for maintaining the air quality. So that has now come into limelight.
So what is Mitsubishi doing for this? I mean, in the pandemic, what has your offering been?
See, for fresh air supply, that is a kind of a paradox in India, whether outside air is more polluted or inside air is more polluted. So most of the cities, the outside air is more polluted than the inside the air conditioned area. What, like we say, breathing is not a choice. So we all need oxygen. So bringing fresh air is mandatory, even if it is polluted, to maintain the oxygen level inside the air conditioned area. So what was like, we need to go for a carbon dioxide or non-breathable air presence inside the air conditioned area, then integrate it with the fresh air supply, so that there is a demand-based ventilation is infused or along with the air conditioning. In addition to that, try to clean the fresh air maximum possible within the limit. Because already maybe system is installed, we have a limitation. If it is completely new system, we can go for a better air filtration.
I'm still going to ask you, Deepu, what has been the customer's reaction to air conditioning, given that it's a fear factor in the pandemic? And office air conditioning is equal to fear.
Absolutely.
How have you dealt with it?
On a practical note, there is no solution as of now. So there is a various communication says that, okay, within certain limit, it doesn't spread, within certain distance, it may not spread. But in reality, microorganism survives in air conditioned area and it keep spreading from one person to other. So the option which is coming out presently is more compartmentalization of a office area, if it is a public space. So that a person who is breathing out, his air is getting recirculated and filtered within that certain area and not getting spread across the office. Like a courier boy who comes from outside and delivers the courier in the reception, that same air will get moved to the managing director's cabin or across the office. So more compartmentalization of the air, so that the stale air don't get mixed much and the filtered air only goes from one side to the other side. So that is the practical way which we are trying to address into that. So in a nutshell, it is more of a centralized air conditioning, but with a more compartmentalization of individual air units, catering to individual needs.
So if you have a room unit, it's safer than having the central unit because shared air.
Yes, reducing the shared air, that is the current option only. Till we find a way how to neutralize the viruses in a better way.
Have you got into air purifiers?
Yeah, the current air purifiers uses a trapping method, like it's like HEPA filters. It uses trap the size of smaller particles so that it doesn't pass through. So all these microorganisms have to survive on that, on a microparticles PM 2.5, which is a very common name. So the filter will trap PM 2.5 particle, it will not pass through. So we are using an arresting method to prevent the spread of the virus. So there are certain other technology which is people are started advertising about negative ions. Different names are given into that, which can go and neutralize the viruses. So we put a lot of negative ions into the air which has been supplied into the room. So whenever a virus comes out of a person, when he breathes out, these ions will kill the virus, but that has not yet reached the mainstream. So current air filters are a kind of a partial solution. We cannot say it as a 100% solution.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Deepu. Over to you, Anthony. Elevators were in the news when the whole pandemic broke out, with the Wuhan virus supposed to have been started with, pressing of the elevator buttons. What is your industry, how has it kind of moved in this last 1 year? What have been the changes you all have brought about, changes clients are asking for?
So yeah, so you're very right. I think during the pandemic, the whole safety awareness has enhanced to a great extent among all the users. And earlier, elevators was, we never used to bother. We just step in, press the button, and it moves. But post the pandemic, I think there has been a lot of requirements for not, to move the elevator without actually touching the button, having larger elevators so that, you have a social distancing maintained in the elevators, reduce the travel time, so that the elevators doesn't stop at every floor, but then it groups people together who have to travel to the same floor so that the distance is covered in a shorter period of time. So there are a lot of requirements which have come up just to make people feel safer. Sanitization of elevators, since it's a closed environment, a closed space. So what we have been doing in the last 1 year is specifically addressing some of these needs. For example, now today touching the button is something which people don't want to do, and everybody is using paper or keys or things like that. So
those little plastic and wooden keys which people have been using.
Yeah, correct, exactly. So what we have done is we have come out with a touchless feature, which kind of gives a certain sense of safety to the users. So basically, what it does is you bring your finger close. You don't have to actually touch the button, but you bring it 4 to 6 millimeters close to the button. It senses it, and then it senses the call you want to give, and then it takes it to that floor. So that's one way of operating it. The other way is also through a barcode which is put on the COP, which is the car operating panel, and with a smartphone, it reads the barcode, and then your phone becomes the car operating panel. So you can choose the floor you want to go to from your smartphone itself. So that's the second thing which we have now introduced also in the market, which is available. So it gets us, users can now use elevators without actually touching the button. The second thing is, I think, I know some of the panelists spoke about how we are trying to reduce human intervention, that's one of the themes which is coming out as to how do we do that. So what we are now going to be working on, which we want to really do, is remote monitoring of elevators, wherein we monitor the elevator. So if an elevator breaks down or things like that, we come to know even before we get a complaint. So without any intervention, we come to know. Seamlessly, the information gets passed on to our technicians. And with the remote monitoring, we are able to find out, what was the reason the elevator broke down, so that when the technician goes to the site, he's much better prepared. He has the complete data. He has everything about all the details about the equipment. He goes equipped with the spare parts. He goes with all the required tooling so that things get done right the first time. So we've done a lot of things. We've given smartphones to our people in the field so that we connect them seamlessly. We are able to find out who is closest to the elevators, just to give a better experience to the end customer.
Thanks, Anthony. I'm going to come back to you. Charu, are we getting the answers we require, or are we missing anything?
No, we are getting the answers that we require. I would be interested to know we have a couple of technology players, like we have people from Mitsubishi. Mr. Khanna mentioned the lack of standardization, and how difficult it is for machines to talk to each other. We have been writing at CW about the use of hardware that is, or technology that is, hardware agnostic, and about the, if I could just say, the KNX protocol. So it would be interesting to know to what extent these kind of protocols have been adopted by technology companies in India, whether in the HVAC sector or in the lighting sector. And are these actually something that, are we actually seeing adoption so that to make it easier for technologies to talk to each other? Or is that just something that's happening in the West and we still haven't moved that way as yet?
Yeah, correct. As Mr. Amit has said, every company has got its own protocol, but now we are seeing a common protocol like BACnet, KNX, which is coming into place, which is trying to integrate various suppliers, various vendors. So Mitsubishi may be not able to directly communicate with a different one, but it can be converted into a different language, which is understood by the other side. So we have these conversion devices has to be added in between. And then finally, somebody has to program also, like when somebody switches on the air conditioner, when the windows blind needs to be closed or windows has to be closed, all this needs to be programmed separately. So there is not a single ready-made program which is available to do all these things. So for each ifs and ifs, then that situation we need to create practically. So communication is.
Sorry, what you're saying is there's a lot of customization required.
Yes. The communication is the first challenge. Even if it starts communicating, what it has to do when it gets a feedback or what data has to be sent, that is the thing. Like Windows open, air condition should be switched off because it's a wastage of energy. You are trying to bring in fresh air. So it can be connected, but still the programming or it has to be configured to be that way by a different person. So interconnecting between AC to window is one thing, then programming that is another thing. So there will be, for two different vendors to come together, you need a third vendor also.
So a system integrator, what you're saying, is actually key to putting all the elements together.
Yeah, but there is no system integrator which is do with all the vendors, different vendors.
I see. Okay. So do we have enough system integrators in India, or is that an area where we still, is it an area where we need to see a lot of evolution?
See, one point I need to add is on the standardization. Like I said, see, system integrator, if it is there, the customer's demands are keep changing because there is no standard thing. Like if you say, this is the standard integration which is going to happen in a residence or in an office application, that kind of standard automation is not there. Every time the customer demands different things. So every time the integrator has to do the activity again and again, even it is from the building to building. So that once the standardization is kept, like windows open, air conditioning off, based on the attendance of the or when somebody enters, the AC should be switched on. All this has to be integrated, and some standardization has to happen. Currently, that itself is not there. So every time the integrator is reinventing the wheel for every client.
Okay.
Charu, can I add to that?
Yes, in fact, I was just going to come to you because you're the right person to interject here.
Yeah. So you mentioned something about this KNX. If I have to talk about the construction/building world, smart and non-smart, okay, there's a lot of things which are still non-smart, whole set of it. The industry is currently replete with all these 3-letter, 4-letter words, right? You have KNX, 3-letter, 4, you have different kinds of buses, because each of the manufacturers over their evolution on the hardware, on sensors, controllers, etc., they would have developed a particular thing or a code, and they would have got together with a bunch of other folks, which would form a body like a KNX, like a BACnet, like a Modbus, right? Like N2 bus, like J bus. So all these buses, unfortunately, I think that was the discussion which Amit had mentioned, they don't talk to each other, right? For the reasons best known to manufacturers in the industry, in the building industry and building services, they don't talk to each other because most of the protocols are proprietary. How is the world going to be a better place, and how are we going to smartify the experiences, right? You mentioned about convenience, you mentioned about comfort, and there is a cost factor which is behind this. And pandemic has really, balanced out everything, right? All of us are at home. Most of us are now sitting at home and connecting. Some people are at office. There is a hybrid. There is a flex happening. all of a sudden, around this time last year, when the pandemic had stuck, cloud was completely unheard of, right? Everybody used to say, what is cloud, right? What is on-cloud services? Now, things like on-cloud, things like IoT, which is Internet of Things, these are the ones which have sort of, made the entire field a level playing field, which means you don't need to have any legacy. If you have a smart sensor and the sensor services are hosted, say, for example, on a Microsoft Azure or on Amazon's AWS or on a Google Cloud, right? It is automatically interoperable with various other devices and systems in the building, like elevators, air conditioners, lights, right? Whatever subsystem it consists of. So I would say for the world to be an equal place in the sense of delivering all these kinds of experiences, what we're talking about, two things will matter the most moving forward. One is interoperability, which means that whatever Deepu is talking about can I understand, right? And whatever we are talking about can Amit understand, right? Which means the interoperability, we should be able to mesh with each other. That's completely missing, right? Conventionally, industries are all legacy-based industries. And for this to get normalized, it'll take time, but the shift is now got accelerated because of the pandemic, right? In terms of smartification, in terms of having connected buildings in place. The second one is open standards. First is the standard, second is open standards. That's the reason you have governing bodies like IEEE, for example, or IEC. These are the standards which people have to play with. So if you make an equipment and if it is standards conformant, then obviously, whether it's Mitsubishi or Otis or Schindler or whosoever in case of elevators, or be it Wipro or a Signify Philips or Panasonic in lighting, the system should be able to talk to each other. That gives tremendous amount of freedom, independence, convenience, and comfort to building owners and also building operators. Today, it doesn't happen. But I think the pandemic has really brought everybody to their knees. If you don't adopt to IoT, and if you don't accelerate your journey onto the cloud, you'll be left behind. You'll be irrelevant in 1 or 2 years time from now. Because the competition mandate is not between the existing industry players. The disruption is going to be caused by someone who is outside of the industry, and they're going to completely reshape the world, reshape the smart buildings. Honeywells of the world, Johnson Controls, Siemens, Schneider, they can keep resting on the laurel saying we are leaders. But the next set of innovation on smart buildings, mind you, is going to come from companies like Microsoft, companies like Amazon, companies like Google. They are the ones who will say, this is now going to be the standard for our standard operating procedure for the experiences to be delivered inside a smart building and a smart campus. So rules of the game are going to get changed very, very soon.
Where does Wipro stand in this change game?
Where does Wipro? So we are already there in terms of making a whole lot of our smart and connected lighting systems and the sensing systems adaptable to each of these. We've already started working in this arena. We are partners with Cisco on the digital building practice. So which means that we really get to know Cisco's aspirations in terms of what they want to deliver from a smart and connected building perspective, what kind of human experiences are required. And obviously building is on one side, which means certifications like a LEED come into picture, the green building certification. But now the shift is not just the LEED part of it, but people are saying that LEED is okay, green building certification is fine. But what is catching up rapidly is the well certification. Wellness of the occupants in the buildings is going to be the prime driver, right? What are the buildings made for? Buildings by standalone do nothing. People occupy the building. How can I enhance the occupant experience inside the building? How can I create a wow factor in the office and make sure that the wellness and well-being of the employee who is working in the building is taken care of? So well certification again is going to be super important out there. So we have over the last 2.5 years time put together a whole portfolio of solutions which can deliver not just the product experience part of it, but the kind of user experiences what the users want in different kinds of environment, especially in an office arena or industrialized environment or in a warehousing or in a smart city. So that's where we are. So IoT sensors and rapid adoption to cloud-based services is going to be the name of the game.
You know, the industry's response to lighting in the pandemic, has it been more from the commercial sector or the residential sector?
Commercial sector, as we speak, especially the IT tech companies, hardly 5% of the people are attending the buildings. They're in office buildings. And now with the collaboration tools coming in to picture, like the Zooms and Teams and WebEx, etc., companies also have realized that there is a scope for them to look at real estate optimization. Not everybody needs to be in the same building, same place, same
Absolutely.
time. There's going to be a whole lot of hybrid. There's going to be a whole lot of flexi, which comes into picture, right? So, but people will have to meet people. We are human beings, and hence human interactions are going to be important. So office in the new context, once the pandemic clears up, is going to be used more for in-person interaction, for collaboration, for catching up. So it will become more a social hub, more like a hotel. So the designs which are required to make it a social hub versus what it is right now, right, which is more like workstations spread all over the place with a little bit of meeting rooms, etc. There's going to be a massive shift. All this is going to be now changing as we speak. Some of them have changed, and the next 1 year's time, a lot is going to change when people start coming back to the offices in some percentage. Right now it's 5%, which is minuscule. Once it starts going to 20, 25, 30%, we will have to have spaces in the office which are convenient for people to use, right? Otherwise they will not come. Otherwise they will say that, no, we have collaboration tools, we'll sit at home and work. As long as the work is happening, productivity is not hampered. Why do you want us to come to the office chasing traffic in cities like Bangalore or Mumbai or Delhi?
What's the response of the residential sector?
I don't think I'd be in a position to answer on the residential part.
Okay.
There are other panelists who are, I think, better placed. Mehernosh and Srirang, maybe you would like to take on the residential part.
I'll take it to them in a bit.
Yeah.
Can I ask Mr. Anand to come in? So to ask you primarily pandemic and smart buildings and green and sustainability. What's your view? What has the impact been in the last year?
Ever since we started in year 2001, the Indian Green Building Council, glad to see our friend Ramki, and whom we know for a very long time, ever since we started. See, India has a rich culture and heritage, and very glad that Amit and others will also agree. We all salute all the architects who believe in the spiritually on the 5 elements of nature, the Panchaputas. So when you design a building, whether it is a residential or a commercial, you are asking a lot of questions on specific. That's the reason I'm addressing. So the 5 elements of nature, the everyday you get up, how do you deal with the site? How do you deal with the water, energy, materials and resources, and indoor environmental quality? There is a focus for ages. Though the pandemic has taught us for the last 1 year on a different tone. So we always believe in IGBC, and all of our stakeholders believe in the 5 elements of nature or Panchaputas. And whatever we do, whether we do design a residential building or intense commercial building in Mumbai or in tier 2 or tier 3 cities, our focus is always people friendly. Technology is an enabler. We salute all the technology suppliers whom I work with, all of them, the carriers, UTC, Daikin, Mitsubishi, Wipros, all of them. OTs and elevators, all of them. Technology will be there. We will definitely embrace. But our main focus is how do you create an ecosystem? How do you design, whether it is an office or whatever it is, in harmony with nature? In fact, our own office, ever since the Unlock 1.0 was released, all of us, including me, we are all going to office with all the precautions and protocols told by the local government and the central government. So our air conditioning systems were well designed right from the early parts of the design with the fresh air. People also mentioned about the quality, not only the quality, quantity also. How many people we have, how much amount of fresh air we have, we all had that cushion. So we in IGBC is a strong believer of it should be always a people-centric, whatever we do. So that is the reason this is a voluntary scheme, which Ramki also mentioned about certification has helped us in embracing these kind of a challenges. Though I am not a medical professional, even still the medical professionals are trying to understand where this pandemic has started and all those things. We are not getting into that. To put the nutshell on this particular panel, pandemic is all taught about how do you have that health, hygiene, and our focus was right from the day one for the last 20 years is on health and well-being. Though we're talking about the wellness now, that is always there for ages in India. So I would love to quote the sunlight, what we wanted to have in India in our built environment. Sunlight and fresh air are the best sanitation measures we can aim for. So even in a commercial building, well ventilated using the mechanical systems where the occupancy levels are very high in a corporate office or a BPOs or call centers. People are talking about 35 square feet per person in many of the Bangalore's and Hyderabad's and Bombay. So what kind of a systems we bring in which will be able to take care of the amount of fresh air? Tongue in cheek, I'm part of the system, but due to various reasons during the summer, though many of the offices, conventional buildings, they have a provision for fresh air. When you have a budget to cut down the cost, many of us, we stopped bringing the fresh air actually. Forget about the pandemic. Because the moment I bring in a fresh air, my energy consumption is going to go up. So that was the approach 2 years before. So whereas right from the beginning, we in IGBC always believe in, as I told you, we would love to have cloud-based IoT, all the technology, but it has to be integrated with green. Smart in the terms of only the technology and the iPhones and the smartphones alone may not provide a greater space which will be in harmony with the nature. That's what the pandemic has started as an individual or a personal level, I would feel. So we in IGBC are very grateful to all the stakeholders, the designers, the developers and others, how we are able to showcase these buildings are doable both in the residential, commercial, or even in the leased out and tenant spaces also, multi-tenanted spaces also. How this design can be well oriented, which brings in enormous amount of sunlight, not the heat, if it is mechanically ventilated. At the same time, the buildings have become an animal by itself. Ramki and others talked about 5% of people only started. So when I am designing a building for 100 people, how do I control my lighting, air conditioning, building management system for only 5 people walking in? On top of it, India is all IT and ITS services. We work 24/7. So the weather, the climate keeps changing very frequently. Summer days are, you are able to get the monsoon. On a winter month, November, December, this year in Hyderabad was as good as a summer month actually. So on top of it, we always see the system not as a pump, air conditioner and lighting as an isolation. As you walk into a building, how you see everything, right from the building orientation, the glass what you use, the shading devices what you use, the doors, the window openings, then comes the mechanical system. So if you integrate all of that, then you are safe. Either that is only a backnet and others only talking to each other.
This is what you're saying. With the whole commercial office space and attendance depleting, it's a catch-22 situation. The need for smart buildings is more than ever, and it's not a time you're willing to going to be able to spend on it.
Definitely. Because if you got a Ferrari car, you cannot drive in this Ferrari car in Amirpet.
Absolutely.
So if you have created a huge air conditioning system, it will become a white elephant. At the same time, if I got, Amit also mentioned, if certain systems are not there, I cannot bring down the walls in order to integrate these systems. So in my opinion,
is the IGBC looking at a wellness?
Well-being is always a part of it. See, the kind of paint, the carpets, finishing, whatever you use are all people friendly, not only environment friendly and energy friendly. Right from the green building movement, it is always people friendly because the air which I am breathing, whether pandemic or before pandemic, in an air conditioned place, before it goes into my lungs, it just comes in contact with my false paneling, lighting systems, carpet, furniture, then goes into my lungs through the nostrils. So the amount of pollutants it has observed, how do I control, treated fresh air? The solutions are available.
No, so my question to you is, IGBC has a wellness certification?
Yeah, even before the pandemic, 4 years before we launched, we call it as the health and well-being. Based on the same, again, I'm looking at the 5 elements of nature, how it is integrated with your 5 senses. So that is a whole belief, the Indian way of doing it. So how the 5 elements of nature will integrate with the 5 senses of people, there's already a lot of uptake on the market. IGBC's health and well-being is an uptake.
Okay, I'll come back to you. Yes, Thank Mr. Athalli, I'm sorry I've kept you waiting very long.
May I have a word? Just
yes.
I wanted to make for what Anand was saying.
Yeah.
It's great if buildings, instead of getting a certification while they're being constructed, if there could be a system of an annual certification, right? Because you should be able to, a lot of buildings work perfectly when they've just been built. But we've looked at buildings that are 5-7 years old and there is dust in the air conditioning ducts and there is, etc.
So you're basically, Amit, what you're saying is you need an audit.
Yes, you should have every 5-year audits to maintain the certificate. You just don't get it as a one-time, free pass.
Thanks, Amit. These are all inputs given by people like you. It is not only 5 years, it's only 3 years valid now. If you see our certificates, what we are giving for the last 3 years, it comes with the expiry date.
Okay.
So if we are constructing a new building and inaugurating in March 2021, it is valid till March 2023 only. So even between 21 and 23, every 6 months, we start asking energy and water data. If somebody is certified IGBC Platinum, if the performance is not so great, either they will be degraded or somebody has got a goal. If they're able to enhance during the operation, they will land up there. After third year, they will come into a existing building rating program. Because now you have constructed a new building. So we have 27 such rating programs to suit various typologies. I will share it with you. Thanks for the inputs. Now it is already tracked up. And we are working with many projects which have been certified earlier. They got a lot of benefits. We are not only concerned about the certification, there is a value addition. As you rightly said, if I bought the chiller or a lighting system or a furniture which is going to enhance the productivity, enhance my energy efficiency, whether it is happening or not, we would love to have a deep relook, identified more areas to enhance the overall building performance.
Actually, I'd like to question you, one more question to you, Anand, from that. Who's really concerned after 3 years? If the building does or doesn't have a certification, the project has been sold, the occupants are already there. Is there, whose concern is it at that point? After 3 years, who's concerned? A lot of the green imprint used to be for selling the project, for marketing it, for touting it as low maintenance. After 3 years, who's really concerned?
There are, as I told you, these are very big buildings and built environment are very complex. Imagine if I own the building, it's a corporate office, it's my own investment. Imagine I'm supposed to consume, say, X million units. If it is X plus delta X, it directly addresses my bottom line. Imagine if it's a multi-tenanted building. So we do educate the people also, put it in the public domain. That's the reason we work with both with the demand and supply for the last 10 years. So even as a tenant, if I walked into a building which has been certified, saying that it is a green building, I walked in today. So I should be able to know whether the systems are maintained with respect to my elevator, water STPs, air conditioning system, how it has been enhanced. So it has to bring down the energy consumption also.
No, the question is, and of course we are digressing a bit, and so what I'm saying is, it should matter to someone, and there should be some, benefit stroke, something taken away. If you're not complying, there should be something that you don't get for it to be meaningful. I understand what you're saying, the audit, but does it really matter is the question. I'll now take it to Mr. Rathaliye. So what has been your experience in the pandemic, real estate?
I will get down to the experience, but the last question, that it matters to whom. We have two types of real estate, where the building which you can see in the background is a 6 lakh square feet commercial building, and we lease it. We don't sell it. So it definitely matters to us that even after 3 years and even after 5 years, the building continues to function well. And it's the word of mouth of tenants which is going to bring new tenants or going to bring increments. So the commercial buildings, it does matter for a developer over a long term whether the buildings are functioning properly or not functioning properly. So that was the shortest question. In terms of experience in pandemic, it has been a very interesting experience. And I'm happy that it has validated many of our planning philosophies and steps which we had taken. We started this project in 2014. We spent 1.5 years only planning this project for the commercial building and for residential building. Typically, a developer would rush in to launch the project so he can start selling. But we spent 15 months planning on it. And I'm happy Ramkrishnan mentioned this, that the buildings are becoming social spots. So one of our philosophy was that why can't we elevate a office building to a hospitality level? Why can't a person who walks into my building feels he's walked into, say, a Sofitel or a hotel? Why can't he feel welcome? And every move he makes, whether he goes to the food court, whether he is in an elevator, whether he is in his office. So we concentrated on well-being and we tried to upgrade our building from office building to hospitality levels, which has actually reaped very big dividends for us. So our experiences, if you invest in quality, the dividends which you get are far, far higher and better. So I would advise everyone to invest in quality as such. Like simple things which we did are lifts are much higher, 2.7 meters rather than the standard lifts. We paid a lot of more money to our lift vendors. I don't want to get into the names right now. Similarly, the sunlight penetration, 78% of the facade is a glass facade, so central core. So virtually whole of the office has a sunlight penetration all the time. And I did attend a course on wellness in Hong Kong, which did influence me quite a lot. So we've been concentrating on wellness in addition to the LEED Platinum certification which we received. And as a result, we are finding that we are able to attract extremely premium tenants like foreign banks against a massive competition. This is our first project in commercial real estate in Navi Mumbai. And I don't need to get into the names, but there are very, very well established large players in this belt. And I'm happy that only because of these quality features and the additional investments which we made, we are able to win clients who really appreciate these kind of features. And
one question for you, Mr. Atalia, is what is the cost as a developer to smarten your building across the board on the parameters you've mentioned? Is it worth it in a percentage sense? What is the cost, and do you feel it is justified, and do you kind of avail of it?
I am fully convinced that the additional investment is justified, because we are here for long term. We are not here where we're going to sell the project, wash our hands and walk away first. But even in our residential projects, 4 years back, instead of building one block, we planned 4 blocks connected by a central staircase to make sure that every room in the house has a cross ventilation, which is a rarity in Mumbai. In other places, it's possible. As a result, when real estate was dipping, my phase 1 is totally sold out in residential buildings. This was one of the key features in pandemic, which kind of tenants lapped up. There are many other features also, but this was one of the features which was planned before pandemic, and it has been greatly appreciated by most of the new clients. Coming down to cost, to generalize is a very tricky question, because as Anand would be able to say that whether you are building a silver LEED building or a platinum LEED building itself will make a cost differential of 10 to 15% into the building cost and the air conditioning cost. So when you are making it smarter, it's even a different thing. I slightly digress. I don't know how many of you have heard of a quantum theory, but quantum theory is a very interesting theory which has fascinated both physicists and philosophers also. And it states that the very act of watching, the observer is able to affect the reality. And the same thing goes for the operational cost. If you are able to observe what is happening, that itself gives you a huge ability to control and react to the costs. So again, before we started the building, every panel in my building was attached with IoT. People kept on telling me, just attach it to the main panels, you don't need to do it. I said, let me give the freedom to the tenants. Actually, only 20% of the tenants are using that every IoT in every panel. But the guys who are using it are so overjoyed that they are saying that we will never be able to get this kind of detailed information before. And we have internally developed an app on mobile where all this information is made available to property managers on the mobile app. So there is no end to how much you can invest. It really doesn't cost that much more to upgrade the building. But every penny we have invested, we have reaped benefit out of that. And during pandemic, specifically fresh air and other things were there. Please. You can't hear me?
Oh, we can.
Okay. No, I thought you raised the hand, so you wanted to ask something in between. I'm sorry, I'm not able to hear you.
We can't hear you, Paru.
Can't hear. Can you hear me now?
Now we can.
Okay. Okay.
Sorry.
Thank you. Sorry. I'm sorry. Yeah.
I
want to know what is the maintenance cost of IoT, smartening a building? What is the cost in terms of maintenance? In terms of life cycle costing, do you have any idea of what it would cost to justify the cost that you spent upfront?
Actually, the cost of IoT is quite minuscule, to be honest. The cost of integrating those IoTs and getting sensible information is what really costs more. As Amit and others talked about lack of integration, it is a problem. And I wouldn't like to throw too many figures around, but in a 6 lakh square feet building behind me, we have spent 5 crores only on integrating IBMS and implementing IBMS. So if you're willing to make those kind of investments, we are reasonably able to talk. We reasonably have figures of how many people are there on the floor, whether the AHUs are functioning at what level, whether we are pumping more air or not. So it's question of having belief that the information generated will be used and investing upfront. It's a tall task, but I think it's still worth it.
Can you put the cost in some kind of percentage?
See, percentage cost is a
as a developer who understands, I'm not asking for specific projects. I'm just saying that, when you're doing costing, green costs this much, greening a building, people keep throwing numbers. It costs 20%, then 15%, then 5%. Then there is life cycle costing justified, etc. So if you can throw some number just for an understanding.
After planning a LEED platinum building already, to further smarten it up, the investment is not too much. It's less than 5%.
Okay.
Because most of the investment already goes into making it a LEED platinum building.
Got it.
So you really don't need to invest too much after you already have a LEED platinum building in place.
Okay. Thank you. I want to go to Anthony.
I just have two small things to add. Lot of discussion on air conditioning happening. So one of our tenants actually demanded that we install ultraviolet rays into AHUs. And we did that for the tenant. He was willing to pay for that. And another solution about these negative ions, I have personally installed these machines in my conference rooms because that's where more people gather together to discuss. And we have had fantastic results. I mean, we have been working from 20th May onwards because we had in situ workers, so we restarted our work. And I haven't detected a single COVID case due to the contact within office. So there's this device called ShycoCan. There must be many more, but it's proud because it's invented by an Indian scientist. And in terms of preventing COVID, it works very well. And we are even offering it as a service to the tenants that if they pay X rupees per square feet more, we will install these devices with negative ions, which will eliminate not only corona. Actually, there are empirical studies that it even eliminates common colds and normal flus also. So when you move to wellness, there is a huge upside possible and huge investments also are possible and required.
Thank you.
I hope I have answered your question.
Yes, you have. Thank you so much. Anthony, 2 questions for you. What are your experiences and challenges with system integrators when you're working with a smart building? And the second thing is, what is the role of air quality within an elevator, again, an enclosed space? And have you all done any work with, I know HEPA filter is a word which keeps getting thrown around, used in, aircrafts. And that's why they say that you really don't have too many cases coming out of an aircraft because of the filters. So is there something that you are doing in your elevators? You need to unmute yourself.
Yeah. So coming to the first part, we are one of the players who support, the system integration, and we are one of the providers. So we have challenges because each project is different. So especially when we do the larger infrastructure projects. So in my earlier assignment, when we were doing projects like the Mumbai International Airport or the Mumbai Metro, there are severe challenges coming because there is, as the panelists mentioned earlier, about the lack of standardization which happens in, and which necessitates the need for a system integrator to come in and put all these systems together. So that's always a challenge. And I think generally the larger this project, and especially on the larger infrastructure projects, we see this more and more. We don't know what the real solution is, whether there is a solution, but I think the only way forward is industry coming together and trying to set a certain amount of standardization. I think maybe a certain amount of pressure from the real estate developers, from the end users, will also aid this process. But I think that is what would be required for us to do. I think, see, finally, a collaborative approach with the real estate developers is what is important. I mean, they need to understand our requirements, and we need to understand their requirements. I think that is what will help us, in this whole system integration, what we talk about. Coming to the air purification part, yes, actually the ride in the elevator is not very long. I mean, it's a very, very short ride as compared to the time you spend in offices and all that. So while there are solutions available to provide clean air to inside an elevator while you are traveling, it's not frankly taken off to such a large extent. I haven't, we do offer it, but we haven't seen it really getting implemented, because at the moment, probably it's not been so popular, or maybe we have not been able to explain the benefits of it, I think, but this will take some more time as we go along.
Charu, is there anything we are missing?
No, I think we've covered all the points.
Anybody has any other insights you would like to offer? An experience and insight?
I would like to say one thing, that you asked about issues with system integrators. One issue is that they never say no, right? They always say ki hum kar lenge, we do it, and they will try and figure out a way to do it, which is not necessarily in your interest. I mean, as the gentleman who was before me said, that it's a large amount of money that you have to spend on integration, and you want to make sure that you're getting something that doesn't damage any of the component parts. But however, there are some systems which will control air conditioning, but if Mitsubishi offers 20 variations on control, which is fan speed and temperature, etc., they may offer only 5, right? So they're dumbing down the technology that Mitsubishi offers in order for it to match the protocol of their device.
Right.
Sometimes, I mean, it would have been great to have a system integrator on the panel, and they would have, again, I'm sure he would have never said no.
Yeah, you're right, Amit. We would have got the kind of insights and answers, but we'll get it through the story. So I'm seeing a few things that are coming up through this discussion in terms of a need to smarten buildings, so to speak. One is to take into account the wellness of the space. The second is the need for standardization, so that different service providers can talk to each other. And the third is, of course, a system integrator, where with standardization, the ability of the integrator to get all the vendors and all the platforms to talk to each other will change significantly. So we're going to bring this all out in the story. If there are any additional insights which we think, yes, Frankie.
I just wanted to add to one significant point, since you're talking about wellness and well-being. There is this famous equation which JLL talks about. It's credited to them, 330-300, right? 3:30:300. So just let me spend a few seconds in terms of what it means and how is it relevant in a smart building discussion. 3 is the amount of money you spend per square foot on your energy and utilities. It can be cost of lighting, cost of HVAC, cost of running all the utilities. That's the electricity cost. 30 is the amount of money per square foot you spend on your real estate, right? Either in terms of running it, maintaining it, managing it. And 300 is the amount of money you spend on your employees. So I would say conventional wisdom says we should have really looked at the 300 part of it and looked at, can we probably enhance that experience out there, while the 3 and 30 will get automatically answered and they'll get aligned. Versus the thinking always has been, let's start from the 3 side, which is interesting, right? I mean, energy efficiency is great, phenomenal. Nobody is debating about it. But even if I do 90% optimization out there, I am going to get just how much? 2.7, which is a small portion of enhancing an employee experience and enhancing a guest experience. That's the reason I said the buildings of the future will be more for social interaction. They lack the social hubs. And the hospitality experience, what Srirang had mentioned, is the one which has to be delivered to the occupants. Otherwise, they're going to walk out on you. So 300 in 330, 300 is going to be far more important rather than just focusing on energy efficiency, focusing on real estate optimization. They'll all be there. But if you are able to give joy to the employee who comes all the way and enlighten his life, okay, while he undertakes a journey in that building, you have it. I mean, every stakeholder, every part of the ecosystem will really get benefited by that, enhancing employee experience, enhancing guest experience when they come into the building. That's where the smartification happens.
I'm just going to give Mernosh, I'm sorry, we spoke right in the beginning and we haven't touched base since. Anything else you'd like to add? You need to unmute yourself.
Yeah, sorry. So a lot of people spoke about smart solutions and, you know, how can we integrate? But I think Ramki hit the nail on the head, and he said that unless actually people work in terms of ensuring that the devices talk to each other, it's not going to happen. So, I mean, you will need to have protocols, you know, which will enable each device to speak to each other. And that is something which is crucial. So unless we do that, it's not really going to happen. And as you very rightly mentioned, finally, the smart devices is going to be integrated into Amazons and the Googles of the world. So a lot of things that will need to be done by the manufacturers themselves with respect to ensuring that their devices are IoT enabled and their protocols are such that, you know, it can talk to each other. Also, they should be able to develop a hub, you know, which could integrate various devices together. So a lot of work will be required in terms of the hub itself, or the hub will become an Amazon or a Google or whatever. And the other thing is that, you know, as you are doing a lot of smart devices, it is very important that you develop the software and the entire architecture in India itself. Otherwise, you'll end up having data going to China. So there is, you know, so there are a lot of system integrators right now operating with a lot of devices where servers, etc., are based in China and cloud is based in China itself. So that's something which is not desirable.
All right. Anand, you were saying something.
Yeah, briefly, see, we have prepared COVID guidelines. When you all open up the office, we have put it in our website also. IGBC.in has a rich resources. How do you open up, especially the commercial offices, the green buildings? There is a guideline which has come as a part of the ISHRE and other associations we have jointly done. It is available in our website, igbc.in, number one. Number two is, as Ramki and others also said, we always work on the better places for people. That report is also available. In fact, there is a global study done on cognitive analysis, how a green building, these kind of people-friendly features work on the cognitive senses.
Right.
So we are jointly done with, when we started the health and well-being 5 years ago, the IGBC rating program, we have done it with the Harvard TH for health. That is also available in a report called Better Places for People, which revolves around IGBC certified projects, how it can enhance the health and well-being, productivity or the happiness, or reducing the absenteeism level, bringing down the sick building syndrome, all that whatever we wanted to address during pandemic is being done with the support of all the stakeholders. Thank you.
Before I end, I just want to throw one last question to Amit. Given that our lives have changed and the way that we live, we work, how do you think, what is the role of what is the shifting role of the architect today in providing for in this new world? In a smart building perspective, I'm encapsulating it in a smaller sense, but from a smart building perspective, how does the role of the architect change, sharpen?
So 20 years ago, when I started my career, an architect sat at the top of the pyramid as far as knowledge was concerned about buildings, right? The architect now sits somewhere in the middle, right? Because there's so much knowledge about buildings that is out there and it's rapidly changing. So as an architect, I'm no longer at the helm of it, but I rely on partners to be able to tell me what is the best thing to do, right? And so the shift that has happened is that as architects, we are more collaborative in the design process itself. Earlier, what would happen is that you draw out a building, and when the tendering stage happened, then you got information about new stuff, right? And now what we do is that we bring people to the table, prior to tendering, so that we understand what's current, and then we prepare a document and prepare the design. So we are no longer, we are now a smaller stakeholder in the process, right? More critical, right? But we rely on the knowledge of others more now.
All right. I think it's a great discussion. We've overshot time. Apologies. We've overshot by 15 minutes, but it's been a wonderful discussion.